What if I told you that some of the most powerful, magnetic people you'll ever meet are invisible? They don't speak much. They don't stand in the spotlight. They don't have a million followers, wear designer labels, or post glossy pictures of their morning coffee. But the moment you sit next to them, even in complete silence, something in you shifts. You feel strangely calm. You stop fidgeting. You breathe deeper. And you can't explain why. These people are not louder than the world. They're quieter than the noise within it. And that's exactly what makes them unforgettable. Welcome to Success Lesson, where we uncover the truths the modern world desperately tries to hide. If you find value in what you're hearing, don't forget to subscribe. It's the best way to support the channel and help us continue bringing you deep, transformative content. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt truly peaceful? I don't mean comfortable. I don't mean distracted or entertained. I mean real peace. The kind that doesn't depend on your salary, your house, your relationship, or whether someone texted you back. I'm talking about the kind of peace that sits inside your chest like a steady fire, even when the world outside is burning. The uncomfortable truth is, most people will never experience it. That's because we're conditioned, subtly, constantly, to chase after everything outside of ourselves. More money, more recognition, more validation, more status. We're taught that peace comes from control, from achievement, from being seen. But what if that's a lie? The people who live in real peace don't have more than you. In fact, most of them have less chaos, less noise, less need, less urgency. They're not trying to be happy. They're not climbing ladders or chasing illusions. They've stepped off the stage completely, and not because they couldn't keep up, but because they realized something most of us haven't. The finish line doesn't exist. The race itself is the trap. The quietest people in the room often hold the most wisdom, not because they know more facts, but because they understand what to ignore. They've stripped away the unnecessary. They're not driven by FOMO, nor addicted to attention. They're not trying to prove anything. They're at home within themselves. You'll never see them shouting. You'll rarely see them perform. But when they walk into a room, the energy changes. Why? Because peace is magnetic. In a world addicted to noise, the one who is truly still becomes a lighthouse. Not because they ask to be followed, but because we're all silently begging for someone who reminds us of who we really are. These people don't live on autopilot. They're not constantly stimulated or constantly stressed. They're not sprinting towards some idea of success they never defined for themselves. They've paused long enough to ask the hardest question of all. What if I already have enough? And that single question changes everything. It redefines the way they wake up in the morning. It rewires how they speak to others. It softens the way they move through the world. They're not in a rush. They don't fear missing out. They're not in competition with anyone because they've made peace with themselves. And it shows. It shows in the way they listen without needing to speak, in the way they smile without trying to charm, in the way they exist without seeking attention. They have become the thing the rest of us are chasing. Enough. We think peace is a reward we earn after we achieve, after we succeed, after we fix everything. But peace doesn't wait at the top of the mountain. Peace was always waiting at the bottom, asking us to stop climbing for a moment and simply look around. The irony is brutal. We climb and grind and hustle and perform only to arrive at a version of ourselves we no longer recognize. And by then, we're too invested in the persona to admit we're lost. But the ones who stepped away? Who dared to say no to the noise? Who risked being misunderstood so they could be whole? They found something we didn't. They found the strength to say, I'm not running anymore. I'm not pretending. I'm not chasing what doesn't feel true. And slowly, they built a life so rooted, so intentional, that even the storms couldn't shake them. Here's the part we don't like to admit. Peace is not passive. It's not laziness. It's not giving up. In fact, it's one of the most courageous decisions you can ever make, to let go of the performance, the striving, the false urgency, and choose depth instead. Peace asks you to confront the emptiness you've been trying to outrun. It asks you to sit with yourself, no distractions, no noise, no filters, and ask, what am I really chasing and why? The scariest part, you might not like the answer. But once you see it, once you really see it, you can't unsee it. You'll start to question everything. the way you work, the people you keep around, the way you spend your time, your values, your desires. Everything that once felt urgent will feel artificial. And what you once thought was success might start to feel like a beautifully packaged trap. That's where peace begins. Not with adding more, but with subtracting. Not with speeding up, but slowing down. Not with building walls, but sitting still enough to hear what your heart has been whispering this whole time. You don't need to escape your life to find peace. You just need to stop escaping yourself. And the moment you do, when you finally stop running, performing, proving, you'll discover something terrifying and beautiful. You were always enough. Stay with us. This is only the beginning. Subscribe to Success Lesson so you don't miss the rest of this journey. Because we're not here to shout louder than the world. We're here to whisper what the world forgot. Sometimes, the most successful life is the quietest one. We live in an age where more is never enough. More comfort, more upgrades, more choices, more convenience. And yet, despite all this abundance, many people carry a quiet ache they can't name. A restlessness that creeps in when the noise dies down, when the screen turns off, when the delivery has arrived, but the feeling still lingers. Something's missing. We've been taught that to be fulfilled, we must acquire. To be safe, we must own. To be valuable, we must display. But what if the real key to peace wasn't about gaining anything, but about learning to let go? This is where the ancient wisdom of restraint, or what some might call intentional simplicity, enters. In a world that rewards excess, choosing less is almost a radical act, but not less in a way that deprives, less in a way that frees. There are people who have tasted the high of having more wealth, more status, more admiration, and still found themselves staring at the ceiling at night with a hollow they couldn't name. These are the people who began to understand that chasing more is a race with no finish line. And so, one day, they made a quiet, courageous choice to step off the track. They didn't stop striving out of failure or exhaustion. They stopped because they realized that chasing everything meant losing something far more precious: their peace, their clarity, their ability to be present. They didn't want to live in a house filled with things but empty of meaning. So they turned toward a different kind of wealth, the kind that doesn't show up on balance sheets, but reveals itself in their eyes, in their breath, in the way they move through the world without hurry. True restraint is not poverty. It's not fear. It's not holding back out of scarcity. It's knowing exactly how much is enough and having the wisdom, the confidence, and the inner stillness to stop there. It's the decision to not chase after every trend, to not fill every corner, to not say yes to every offer, simply because you can. It's easy to be swept up by modern life. We're told our value is tied to how much we consume, how many items we own, how often we upgrade. But what if consumption isn't the problem? What if compulsive consumption is? When we buy to escape ourselves, when we accumulate to prove our worth, when we seek to impress instead of express, we slowly trade our authenticity for a carefully curated identity. We decorate our lives like storefronts, but forget to stock the shelves of our inner world. We become experts at aesthetics and strangers to our own needs. But those who embrace restraint begin to ask different questions. Do I really need this? What am I trying to feel by getting this? What would happen if I didn't buy, didn't upgrade, didn't chase? And in the space created by those questions, they often find something astonishing: relief. There is a deep, lasting peace in not being owned by the things you own, in walking into a room that breathes, not overwhelms, in putting on clothes you love, not because they're expensive, but because they feel like you, in spending money consciously, not fearfully, in saying no and meaning it, in knowing that every less on the outside is a quiet more on the inside. More space, more time, more clarity, more freedom. The greatest irony is that so many of us are pursuing freedom by accumulating chains. We think having more will make us feel lighter, but more things often mean more pressure, more responsibility, more maintenance, more expectations. We don't own them, they own us. Restraint reverses that dynamic. It returns power to the person. It says, I choose this, not because I have to, not because I'm settling, but because I've realized I'm not lacking. I don't need more to be whole. I already am. The modern world doesn't celebrate people like this. It can't monetize them. It can't sell them false solutions. It doesn't understand why someone would choose a smaller life, a quieter room, a simpler path. But it is exactly these people, those who consume mindfully, who move intentionally, who choose enough, who radiate a kind of strength the world desperately needs right now. They are not trying to escape life. They are escaping the illusion that life is measured by how full your hands are. They are not denying pleasure or joy. They are simply wise enough to know that pleasure is sweeter when it isn't drowning in excess, and joy is louder in spaces that aren't cluttered with distraction. To live with restraint is to live awake. To walk through the world with both hands open, not clinging, not grasping, not desperate. Just open, aware, present. And in that state, you don't miss out. You tune in. You see more with less. You feel more with less. You become more not by addition but by subtraction. That is not weakness. That is mastery. There's something seductive about the spotlight, about being seen, admired, applauded. It starts small, maybe a compliment, a bit of attention, a glance of approval. It feels good, validating, like proof that you matter. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, that little flicker of recognition becomes a hunger. And before long, you're no longer living your life. You're curating it. In the age of image, we are all being watched, judged, compared. We post, we polish, we perform, not just online, but in our everyday lives. And somewhere along the way, we began to confuse visibility with value. We began to believe that if no one sees us shining, we must not be worth much at all. But here's the quiet truth no one talks about. The pursuit of image is often the fastest route to inner emptiness. Because when your worth is based on perception, your peace depends on performance, and performance never ends. Hollow applause may sound sweet for a while, but it cannot fill a life. Hype has a short shelf life. Attention fades, trends shift, and the version of you that once captivated the world becomes yesterday's headline. But the deeper danger isn't in being forgotten by others, it's in forgetting yourself. The more you mold your life around how you want to be seen, the less you remember how you actually feel. You become an expert at presentation, but a stranger to your own truth. It happens slowly. First, you wear something not because you like it, but because it photographs well. Then, you speak a little differently, not to express, but to impress. Then, you say yes to things that drain you, just because they might look good from the outside. One by one, these choices stack up like bricks, and before you know it, you're living inside a carefully constructed image, a house of mirrors that reflects everyone's expectations, but your own reflection is nowhere to be found. This is the trap of glamour, of aesthetic, of surface over substance. It doesn't scream, it whispers. It doesn't push, it seduces. And that's what makes it dangerous. You see, glamour is not real light, it's reflection. It depends entirely on someone else looking. And if your sense of self only exists in the gaze of others, you will always need to be performing. You will always need to be on. But no one can stay on forever without burning out. People who chase image live with a constant background anxiety, the fear of slipping, of being exposed, of losing relevance. They fear not being enough without the things that make them appear enough. And so they buy more, pose more, try harder, never realizing that the applause they crave is costing them the one thing they can't replace, their authenticity. But those who see through the illusion, who step back and ask, who am I when no one's watching? They begin to walk a different path. They realize that peace is quieter than applause, that fulfillment isn't loud, that the richest lives are often the ones no one sees. They let go of the need to impress, not because they're careless, but because they've redefined what it means to succeed. They stop striving for relevance and start striving for resonance, not trying to be liked by many, but to live in alignment with what is deeply true. And here's the paradox. When you no longer crave the spotlight, you start to radiate something more powerful than visibility. You radiate depth, and depth is rare. In a world obsessed with the superficial, depth is revolutionary. People may not understand your choices. They may question why you're not posting, not promoting, not chasing. But inside, you'll feel a different kind of stability. You'll stop wondering how many people are watching you and start wondering what kind of person you are becoming. This is not a call to reject beauty or achievement or recognition. It's a call to root them in something real. Let beauty flow from honesty, not obligation. Let success be defined by how well your life reflects your values, not just your followers. Let recognition be a byproduct, not the goal. Because at the end of it all, what will matter most won't be the lights, the likes, or the legacy. It will be whether you lived in a way that made you feel whole, whether you could sit with yourself without an audience and still feel like you were enough. To live outside the spotlight is not to shrink, it's to choose a stage where the only light you need comes from within. And that light, it never flickers, it never fades, it belongs to you, always has. There is a kind of courage that rarely gets recognized. It doesn't look like standing on a podium or launching a bold idea. It's quieter, slower, and far more personal. It's the courage to stop pretending, to stop performing, to stop bending yourself into shapes that make other people comfortable. It's the kind of bravery that whispers, I want to live as who I really am, even when that choice costs you approval, applause, or belonging. In a world where everyone is trying to become a version of better, that's often defined by someone else, choosing to live in alignment with your true self is an act of quiet rebellion. Because from a young age, most of us were taught to seek validation before truth. We learned how to earn love, not how to honor our boundaries. We were praised for compliance, not clarity. And so, we became masters of adaptation, shape-shifting into what the room required, what the culture rewarded, what the moment demanded. We became everything we were supposed to be. But somewhere along the way, many of us stopped being ourselves. We dressed for acceptance, not expression. We spoke to be liked, not to be heard. We worked for recognition, not for meaning. And though we may have gathered success, admiration, and status along the way, the question still haunts us in the quiet. Is this really me? That question is not a crisis. It's an invitation to return, to remember, to rebuild your life from the inside out. Living true to yourself isn't reckless. It isn't selfish. It's the most respectful thing you can do for your own spirit and for the people around you. Because when you are honest with yourself, you give others permission to do the same. When you no longer need to be everything to everyone, you begin to show up more fully for the people who actually matter. You stop chasing approval and start creating impact. But make no mistake, living in alignment is not always comfortable. It often means disappointing people you care about. It means having hard conversations, setting boundaries, and walking away from roles you've played for years. It means grieving the image of who you thought you had to be. And it means being okay with not being understood, at least for a while. Yet the freedom on the other side of that discomfort is unlike anything else. When you no longer have to keep up appearances, your energy returns. When you stop editing yourself, your clarity sharpens. When you stop striving to be seen, you finally begin to feel real. You laugh differently. You move slower. You listen deeper. You stop needing to explain yourself and start trusting that the right people will see you anyway. The pressure drops, the mask loosens. The space between who you are and how you live begins to shrink. And that space, that alignment, is where peace lives. People often confuse authenticity with impulsiveness, but they couldn't be more different. Living true to yourself doesn't mean acting on every emotion or chasing every whim. It means being intentional. It means understanding your core values and making decisions that honor them. It means pausing long enough to ask, is this choice coming from my fear or from my truth? The person who lives in alignment is not constantly trying to prove themselves. They are rooted, not reactive. They are guided by integrity, not image. They are not perfect, but they are consistent. And in a world full of people trying to be impressive, they are quietly trustworthy. This kind of life isn't for everyone. Some people prefer the safety of roles, the clarity of rules, the comfort of compliance. But for those who are tired of performing, who feel the ache of disconnection between their inner life and their outer world, this path is open. It's not easy, but it is honest. And honesty is where everything real begins. To live this way is to reclaim your time, your voice, your presence. It's to no longer outsource your decisions to trends or expectations. It's to find joy in the simplest things, not because they are flashy, but because they are yours. A quiet morning, a genuine yes, a well-earned no, a life that reflects your soul, not your social profile. This is not the loudest way to live, but it may be the most powerful. Because when you stop chasing a version of yourself that was never truly yours, you create space for something deeper to emerge. Something still, something whole. And in that stillness, in that quiet space between what the world wants from you and what you truly are, you'll rediscover something you thought you had to earn but always carried within you. You, just as you are. Without the costume, without the script, without the need to become anything other than yourself. That is where real life begins. That is where real freedom lives. There's a quiet kind of power that doesn't come from ambition or dominance. It doesn't shout or compete or demand to be seen. It simply is steady, grounded, and unwavering. That power is born from harmony. Harmony with the world, with others, and most of all with yourself. In a society obsessed with achievement and noise, harmony feels outdated. It doesn't trend. It doesn't climb charts or generate headlines. But it is the invisible thread that holds together the lives that last. Where the world urges us to push harder, move faster, and conquer more, harmony invites us to move with, not against, the natural rhythm of life. You don't have to look far to find it. Step outside at sunrise and listen. The birds don't sing louder than they need to. The trees don't compete for attention. The river doesn't apologize for its curve. Nature exists in a profound balance, each part doing exactly what it was made to do, without needing to outperform the rest. And in that balance, there is peace. Somewhere along the way, we forgot we are part of that same rhythm. We believed the lie that to matter, we must stand out, that to be successful, we must be louder. So we overextend, we overcommit, we overperform. We fill our days, our minds, and our feeds with a constant hum of activity, afraid that if we slow down, we'll fall behind. But behind what? And more importantly, behind who? Living in harmony is not about standing still. It's about moving with intention. It's about listening before speaking, pausing before reacting, and asking before assuming. It's about remembering that not every battle is worth fighting, not every comment needs a response, and not every opportunity is aligned with your values. It's the wisdom of restraint paired with the courage to be soft. You can feel it in people who live this way. They're not in a rush. Not because they lack ambition, but because they have clarity. They know what matters, and they don't dilute it with unnecessary striving. When they speak, their words carry weight, not because they speak often, but because they speak with presence. They listen, they notice. They move through the world in a way that calms those around them, not by trying to change others, but by being deeply at peace with themselves. And yet, harmony doesn't mean isolation. Quite the opposite. It opens the door to meaningful connection. Because only when you're no longer at war within yourself can you show up for others with authenticity. You're not using people to validate you. You're not performing for approval. You're simply showing up as you are for who they are. And that's where real sharing begins. Sharing isn't about giving what's easy. It's not about posting quotes or gestures that look generous from the outside. It's about presence. It's about noticing when someone is tired, even if they don't say it. It's about staying 5 minutes longer just because someone needed to be heard. It's the courage to hold space, to listen without fixing, and to give without expecting a return. We're living in a time when connection is easier than ever, and yet more rare than ever. We like photos, but don't know how to look someone in the eye. We respond with emojis, but struggle to ask how someone really is. But harmony, true harmony, teaches us how to return to each other, not through grand gestures, but through genuine presence. There's a sacred strength in someone who knows how to give from wholeness. They're not drained by sharing, because they're not giving to prove. They're giving from overflow. And that overflow doesn't come from having more. It comes from living aligned, from being grounded in what's real. Imagine a world where more people lived this way, where success was measured not by accumulation, but by contribution, where strength was defined not by dominance, but by gentleness, where power wasn't who could speak the loudest, but who could listen the longest. This is what harmony builds, not only in us, but around us, because the more we live in tune with ourselves, the more others feel safe to do the same. The more we live with intention, the more others are reminded of what truly matters. And perhaps the most beautiful part of harmony is that it doesn't need to be explained. It's felt. It's remembered. It lingers long after you've left the room. like the way silence holds meaning after a song. To live this way doesn't mean you avoid conflict. It means you choose not to become conflict. It doesn't mean you hide from the world. It means you move through it with a steadiness that refuses to be shaken by chaos. Because in the end, harmony is not a strategy. It's not a trend. It's a return to what's natural, a return to what's enough, a return to a version of you that doesn't need polishing or proving, just listening, living, and gently offering yourself back to the world, one honest moment at a time. Conclusion: the quiet return to what matters. In a world obsessed with growth, noise, and visibility, it's easy to forget that the most meaningful lives are not always the loudest ones. We've been conditioned to chase after more success, more attention, more validation, believing that fulfillment lies just beyond the next achievement. But maybe the real breakthrough isn't in adding more, but in subtracting what no longer serves us. Maybe peace isn't something you find by conquering the world, but something you rediscover by coming home to yourself. Harmony, restraint, authenticity. These aren't soft ideals reserved for monks or dreamers. They are powerful, radical choices in a culture that pushes us to perform. And the people who choose them, they don't live smaller lives. They live deeper ones. They know that strength isn't found in controlling everything. It's found in letting go of what isn't yours to carry. They've traded speed for stillness, comparison for clarity, applause for alignment. The truth is, you don't need to become someone else to find your way. You don't need to impress the world to matter. You only need to be willing to remove the noise, the mask, the pressure, and listen. Underneath it all, you already know who you are. You already know what matters. What you're looking for isn't out there. It's within. And the moment you stop running toward everything, you start returning to the one thing that lasts: yourself. The lesson is simple, but life-changing. You don't need more to be enough. You just need to live more aligned with what you already are. How to apply this today? Start small. Choose one area of your life where you've been performing instead of being present. Maybe it's in the way you speak, the way you spend, or the way you show up online. Ask yourself, is this action aligned with my truth, or is it a performance for someone else's approval? Then, make one intentional choice that reflects who you are, not who you think you should be. That's where it begins. That's where freedom starts to grow. If this message speaks to something real in you, I invite you to join the Success Lesson community, a space for people who are done chasing surface-level success and ready to build something more meaningful. Together, we explore ideas that help you live from the inside out. And if you found this valuable, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That simple action gives us the motivation to keep creating content that matters. Let's grow, quietly, deeply, and truly, together.